Hello. I don't think anyone else is going to come today, but I don't know if you had any things you needed to discuss. We'll be meeting tomorrow, so you could probably give your update then.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't mind. Not much to discuss as such. It was just an update. Basically, I was gonna I just submitted a pull request some time ago, and basically like what I've done this week is kind of consolidated. As I said, like right now I was working in different folders, and the code was all like disjoint. So what I've done this week is kind of put it all together in one framework that like I hope to be working on now. And like the main things I was just gonna give an update about like what I've done, and the main things I wanted to discuss was like what I'll be doing next. Like I think the kind of the line I was working on so far, creating the agents, and that is kind of done. And now I've put more on creating the entire simulation around it. And so next week I was planning on kind of integrating the different metrics that I talked about early on. Like so far, I just have a contributor's experience level and the issues difficulty level. So and we have like the GitHub environment. So based on these, like there are some more metrics that I thought I could improve, and also have like these metrics change with the interactions. Like when a contributor makes a pull request, their experience level goes up and such. So that is like the main thing that I was going to be working on, and like if anybody had any suggestions on that, I can screen share just what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
If you are, so uh, yeah. So here basically when I proposed the initial design, I had said I would include these things. So from the environment, the GitHub environment is done now, and everything in it sort of works, and you can go from an entire issue to a merged pull request. Then in the environment variables, so I have issues done for now, and then these are the different variables that were kind of uh, revolving around the issues and the different contributors. So, like one of these, like code productivity, I think I could add by now. Like in the next week, it is another metric that I can add, which is basically like based on the I can ask an LLM to give some rating to the code that is being submitted by the contributors, and based on that, based on that, like I can have code quality and issue resolutions, and I can have a code productivity metric. Community metrics, I think I'll be working on a bit later once I start to get some like real life data if possible, and same for resource availability. And then next for each of the agents, like the domain knowledge is given to them by now in the means of the prompts that I've given. So I've created prompts where I'm telling each agent that you are a contributor agent, you are a maintainer agent. So that is done, and the coding ability is also done using autocode rover, the framework that I've used. And even for reviewing code, I have specific prompts that I've made. So that is done. Memory and learning is kind of that was in the part when I start working on the IRC. So that I'll be integrating later. And then the main thing here, like plan on adding a few of these. Like experience level is added for now, and that is how they can contribute to issues, and it will also be directly affected by the issues that they contribute to. And then like knowledge and engagement level are two other metrics that I think I can, and also motivation that I can do by.
Hello? Hello? Okay,
Hello,
I'm back.
I'm audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so as I was saying, like domain knowledge and coding ability have kind of integrated. Memory and learning will be integrated later on when I start working on the IRC. And then in agent variables, so experience level is created for now. These three are more metrics that I think I can introduce now. And they can all kind of revolve around the GitHub environment where we also have the bidding parts. If they are bidding high, then their motivation is higher. And if they are submitting a pull request, then their engagement level is high. And if their pull request is getting accepted, then their knowledge can increase. So, like in the next week, I think I'm going to be working on integrating as many metrics as I can. So main will be these three for a contributor and a maintainer as well, and this code productivity for the overall simulation. And if possible, if I get some time in the next week, I'll try to kind of see if I can come up with some ways to visualize these metrics when a simulation is run, like some graphs or something I was thinking of. So for each time step, the metrics can be mapped. So I will try to look into that next week. And once that is done, then I will be working on these subtasks. One is personalization and one is this agent-agent communication. Agent-agent communication is being done a bit right now when they kind of do a GitHub discussion. And I also wanted to try to do it, try to simulate an IRC. So I'll see if that is possible.
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, I would focus on the metrics, trying to get those to work. Yeah, so you can have some sort of end state to your simulations. You can do some sort of analysis later. You don't have to you don't have to work out the analyses right now, but definitely, getting to the point of getting metrics that are robust. So it's measuring kind of the things that are going on in the simulation, and then, you would want to output that to some sort of, well, in agent-based models, they usually put them into like like an interface or a slider, but really we'd like to have them like out exported to like a CSV file, because then you can take the data and use it somewhere else and make graphs and things like that. So that would be nice to have. But the metrics, just kind of figuring out how those are, calculated and
being
if they're
changed.
yeah, how things change.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best next step. And then the personalization might be a little bit later. I think maybe that would be next. Or the agent communication, because the agent communication is important. And that's kind of a key to some of the agent-based models too, is that you have this interaction between the agents, and it's just like, depending on how that's handled, that can make a difference in how the simulation turns out. So that would be the route.
Yeah, definitely. Even like once I finish the metrics part, I think I'll kind of make a better map, because personalization and agent-agent communication kind of are quite interlinked.
Yeah.
So I'll try to figure it out, the exact roadmap to do that. But yeah, first next week, once I get the metrics done, I can have like sort of a base model, as you said. And then every time like I implement something new, I'll have some new sort of graph. So we can also see how it's changing.
Yeah.
With the new things. And another thing that I wanted to kind of so now, like in the latest thing that I've kind of so in the latest kind of code that I have, so I have like this entire like all of this being done. So like I have it multi-agent for now, in the sense that it randomly, like I tell it to create 5 contributors. So it creates 5 contributors and it gives like random kind of say experience level or whatever the like their variables are of those agents. Those are allotted randomly, and 5 such agents are created for now. So for next week, for these graphs and for these metrics, I will need to create sort of a better proper simulation. So should I kind of hard code that to, like, I can say that create 15 agents or create 10 agents and give them these names, or should I put that into sort of an input interface, like allow the person to create like each specific thing of the simulation, or just allow them to input a number of like 10 contributors, 10 maintainers, and then I can do the rest either randomly or using elements. So,
Yeah, I think probably an input, like a numeric input, would be best. At least
and
to
then the
start.
rest can be figured out in
Yeah,
package.
yeah. Like if you wanted, if you want to get above like 5 contributors, assigning a name or hard coding is going to be kind of difficult, and like a small
Yeah.
simulation of like 5 or less isn't really that interesting. Although you might offer a way to do that. But I think like probably just having like in most agent based models, you have like a little window that just says initialize with this many agents, or a slider even, which would work, where you just have like from like a very small number to maybe 500. I don't know if that would be that might be a little too much, but like maybe 200. Just
Yeah.
something where you think it's a good range of test conditions.
Right. Definitely. Yeah. So I'll try to work on that.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shubham, hello.
Hey Bradley.
Hi.
So,
Yeah.
as discussed last time, I was actually working on the simulation model where we can actually see. I'll just share my screen.
Okay.
Also, is the screen visible?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I implemented these sliders and a simulation grid where we can, basically see the how the simulation is working. We have all these multiple agents. Red, yellow, and orange are the issue agents based on their difficulties. So yellow is the easiest, orange is the moonshot issue, and red is the Mars shot issue. And also we have contributor agents. We classified into three categories. So blue, gray, and black are again contributor agents based on their expertise levels. Also, I had a meet with Himanshu, I guess last Saturday.
Okay.
So we discussed that for now we can classify these contributor agents randomly for their expertise, but as we move further, future when we implement the RL models, we can figure out some metrics to uh, classify them into those expertise levels. Maybe we can based on the number of issues they have resolved, or based on their rewards or anything like that. So any agent that has the highest reward gets to be the in the advanced gets classified as an advanced contributor and everything. So I implemented a slider where we can dynamically allot the number of contributors, issues, and maintainers, and then we can start the simulation. We can see the agents moving around, it's moving at 20 frames per second. And then I also tried implementing a graph, but for some reason the number of issues that are resolved are not accurately getting. Yeah, I used a data collector function, so
Okay.
that data collector is not accurately, or it is not actually collecting the number of issues that are resolved. The simulation is running over here, and also we can see that the issues are being marked for review. I'll just share my terminal as well.
Okay.
So the simulation is working fine. So
Yeah, it looks like it's doing something. Just
yeah,
the
so
collection of the data is hard to.
yeah. So actually, I wanted to implement multiple graphs, but for some reason that data collector is not working. I'll try to figure that out by tonight, and also I can then push the code into the repository by tonight once that starts working. Because
Okay.
that was my initial ticket last week. I'll just share my.
Yeah, that's great. So that's sort of just the interface over the underlying code, and you're able to visualize it
Yes.
for multiple agents. So the slider is just basically maintainers and contributors
and issue agents, and
yeah,
also
issue.
they're classified as mentioned in the proposal.
Okay. So when they're moving around the space, is that like what is that in relation to? Just kind of their affinity, or
just a second. When they're moving around in space, as we had discussed, if a contributor agent, occupies the same cell as an issue agent, say this is an issue agent, right, of a Mars short classification, which is one of the hardest issues in the repository.
Yeah.
And this is one of the contributor agents. When this contributor agent occupies this cell, because these issue agents are stationary, they don't move around. Only the contributor agents and the maintainer agents move around. So when this or any other contributor agent occupies this cell along with this issues agent, this particular issue agent is marked for review. And then these maintainer agents that are green in color, when these maintainer agents occupy the same cell as an issue agent that is marked for review, it reviews the issue agent based on its code efficiency, and if it is greater than a threshold level, then then the PR is accepted basically.
Okay, that sounds
That
good.
is how it is working right now.
All right, that's good.
Yeah. Right now the agents are moving randomly around their neighborhood cells, but once we implement the RL models, they will actually direct or find their way towards these issue agents.
That sounds good. Yeah. Thanks for the update. Looks like you're doing well. And I'll look for these pull requests later. So I know both of you want to make pull requests. So yeah, just issue them. I'll accept them when they come through.
Yeah, I've created mine like around, I think, 15 minutes ago.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
I'll check it out. Thank you.
Hi, Bradley.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
All right. Welcome, Morgan and Pakhi. Yeah, so I guess, do we have any updates?
Yes, I do have some updates. I could not share my screen on during the meeting on Monday, so I would like to show what I've done till now.
Okay.
1 second. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so I have made these two Python files. One is basically it will generate the graph. It has the functions to add the nodes and edges and to remove the parent node once it splits into the daughter cells and all. And this graph and C function, which is the automata function, it basically it has the training part of the model. So I will quickly walk through the notebook that I've written. Yeah. So this here I've imported the graph and graph NC classes respectively. Right now I have not used the data set. I'm just trying to generate the growing graph. The data set adding it is the last part, so I was keeping it for the end right now. So here you can see this is the initial state of the graph. We have 4 nodes over here, and here then we call the graph NC class and then with the optimizer and all. So it will list all the parameters. And okay, so this I'll go through the graph NC file as well. So here are several parameters that I have defined: activations, operations, hidden channels, and all. And this split network will be basically responsible for creating like the daughter cells from the parent node, and then this do data function that we saw in the notebook earlier will just take like the graph edges and like create like a data set out of it, which will be like given as an input to the model. So I was just modifying the code from their file, so that's why you can see a lot of commented out functions. We don't need them because they were generating it randomly, and we already have like the data set, and also those are not required. And then this grow function will actually help to like call all the splitting functions and all. So I will show like the output as well. Yeah, so it is in the form of a GIF. It's not really accurate right now, but you can see it will like sort of split the parent node into like the daughter cells. I still need to make some modifications in the adding edges function and like the removing functions, because it is not like really removing the nodes, because you can still see like the 0th and like first index is still there and all that. So in these nodes, I am also planning to add like the string name of the daughter cells as like vector embeddings, which it can also take as inputs while splitting the parent cell into like the future daughter cells. So that part I will do when I like finally integrate the data set into this. So I also had one question. You shared the data set that day. So will it be fine if I start like using the larva data set to use in this model?
Yeah, that would be fine. Basically,
All right.
I gave the data set. I wanted to see if we could use some of the XYZ coordinates as the input data, because we already have the embryonic data, and I just wanted to see, basically it'll recapitulate the shape of the organism. So, that's kind of where we want to go with this, and then represent that as the graph. But we would maybe want to grow it. I know, like in an embryo, you have this natural growth process, but in a larval worm or a larval organism, it's already kind of intact, but you can still grow the graph in different ways, and that might be informative if you want to understand kind of, I don't know, maybe different properties of the graph, maybe the most connected parts or whatever. There are a lot of ways to think about that abstractly. So if you have this representation of something that's sort of not growing, but you grow the graph, it's going to sort of try to recapitulate the structure of that thing. But if I don't really know what it'll do, actually. It might do that, it might not. So we'll see. Be interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what I had done till now. So I will add this to the developmental repository if that's okay. I mean, it's not complete yet, but I think I should start making like small commits instead of like pushing the entire code at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do a pull request on that, and then we can just keep updating it.
All right. Okay. So that was it for my update.
Okay, well, thank you. That looks very good. We're making a lot of progress on that.
Thank you.
Definitely, if we can get to the point where we can get that running and, trained and see what happens, that's really, this will be helpful. So, okay. Thank you, Pakhi. That was great. Sarrah, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. So last week I didn't have much of an update. I was sick for like almost the entire week.
Oh.
But I tried covering up a bit during the weekend and then even this week. So basically, like what I have shared last week, my goal was to start incorporating the metric into the framework that I've created. and also start looking at some way to visualize it. So I'll just share my screen. So the first thing that I kind of started to do was so basically, like till now, like last week I had shared that I've created this framework called LLMOSC, like LLM based agent based model for those community sustainability. And I kind of created it to be able to get everything in like a very compact manner, where like every agent has its own file and do everything like that. But then still I had like these separate scripts for running each algorithm, and even though some of the code was modular, some of the code was still very specific, and it was all like kind of hard coded. So basically, like b- uh, b- before starting to integrate the metrics and instead of putting it into code that I would have to change more later, I made this kind of list of to-dos to be able to make it a framework that like I wouldn't have to change going ahead. So like the first thing that I wanted to do was make a script that combines all the functions of this like LLMOSC project. So if anyone wants to use it, they can just directly use the script. And the next thing was I didn't want everything to be hard coded. I wanted like I even discussed this in the meet last week, and even like Bradley said that eventually we want like the user to be able to input stuff, everything from like say the number of users, or even the number of contributors, or everything we wanted to be from coming from the user. So that's like the first thing I did, kind of added these like arguments that the user can like these are currently command line arguments, but even if we integrate this somewhere else, we'll be able to like use these arguments. The number of contributors and maintainers was a basic one. The next thing that I did is so autocode rover, which is like the whole program that I'm using to run, like actually solve each of those issues. I basically made it optional, and the main reason for doing this is that now, like, I need to start working a lot more on the simulation part of it, and this part I know works. But the simulation part, I need to do a lot of tests and need to get the graph running. So having this framework run every single time is quite time consuming, even though I know it's going to give the option correct. It's going to give the correct result. So currently I've just made it optional, where like the default is false, and if I do want to use this framework, I just have to put this command line argument. And I've integrated the whole code such that if we are not using this framework, then we are just kind of pretending that we solve the issue, like kind of randomly estimating whether we can solve the issue or not, and solving the issue. The algorithm part is still happening. So the next, then another option I added was for the algorithm, which is like earlier I had these two different scripts for the authoritarian and decentralized algorithms. So I made that also choosable via the command line and set a default for the authoritarian one. So that was one of the tools done. So I've done like the number of agents and these extra options. One thing I still have to do is issues. Like currently I have the issues that are there in this folder only, and they have to be in this like specific format. So the format will definitely still be there. But what I plan to do going forward is like have maybe the user can maybe provide the number of issues. If they only provide the number of issues without providing the issues themselves, I can have an LLM create them. So that is kind of optional. That is the next to do, to automatically make the issues for the given number of issues. And if that is not there, then another option can be for the user to give both the issues and the file path of where these issues are. So that is one thing that is still remaining. And then another optional to do that I will do not right now, maybe a little later, is have these like contributor agents themselves create new issues. But that's kind of optional for now. These were like basically stuff that I did to the existing code to make it viable to add something new. And the other thing, so this making Docker optional was one of the things which I did using this use ACR. So if Docker is not used, basically it just creates an empty dip file and just creates some kind of a pull request. There is no actual code change, but everything else from reading the issue to discussing about the issue to creating the pull request is done. The solving and writing the code part is done. And so yeah, and then the next thing was to add metrics. Another thing that I did, which is like not written here, but it was kind of a utility for me, was I wrote this another script called Clear Calculator project. Basically, like I have this project that is like the toy repo that I'm working on, and every time the issues get solved and the code gets merged, when I want to run the script, when I want to run my simulation again, I need it to be reverted to the old original model. So that is another like small script I wrote to be able to do that, so I don't have to do it manually every time. And then the main thing of adding the metrics. So I had around 4 metrics that I have in mind, and then more I said I will try. So currently, out of those, like these two are integrated, which is contributor experience and number of issues in the simulation, how many are pending and how many are solved at each time step. So the way this is shown right now is like every time a new time step starts. So like every time we have time step 0, it shows the experience of all contributors and it shows the current issue status. Then as soon as we go to the like something happens, something gets solved, and we go to the next time step. So time step 2, again it shows this, and whichever contributor actually contributed in the previous time step, their experience increases. And similarly, the issue status also, whichever issue gets solved goes into solved. So this much is working for now. And the next thing that I want to do is, so both of these like I'm doing, like adding more and more metrics. This is just 2 for now. And another thing is that I want to store the data at every time step and compare it. Like here, what is happening in this log print statement is just that I can see the experience in this current time step, but I can't see it relative to the earlier time step. So I am kind of want to do that and have it done graphically. So basically, like once that is done, it will look something like this, like a graph that is continuously moving and at each time step, and then you can also see what the previous one was. So this graph that I just plotted is just from a dummy file. It is not integrated into my actual code. I'm in the process of integrating it, but like it's giving me some errors. Basically, the matplotlib window comes up, but it comes out empty. Like this is for the 0 time step, and yeah, so here I use the clear calculator project.py because there are no issues currently to solve. And then so the first time step it comes up blank, which should be expected, but even in the next time steps, basically it doesn't come up blank, but it's handy. Like it gives me a program is not able to continue error. I think it's because of like there's a lot of load on my PC as well with all of these LLMs running in the background and Docker running as well. So I'll try to figure it out something, because having all of that and also having graphics is, I think, putting a lot of load on the RAM and GPU. So I'll try to figure out what I can do, or maybe have some more things optional or reduce the usage. But yeah, that is where I'm right now. So I'm currently doing these 2 things, and like once I can get this graphical representation working, I need to basically add more metrics. So I had like in the board that we have, so yeah, in this I basically added like what is the actual okay, Yeah, so here I added that I want these variables to be there. So currently I have issues and environment variables and I have experience level. The rest of these obviously are like these were kind of existing, like the experience is increasing because every issue is being solved and every issue is being solved. So yeah, this is what happens right now in the code that's running. So that is one thing I need to figure out, and then I need to also add all of these metrics, and this will basically be the rest of my project because code productivity currently I'm not measuring, so I have to have an LLM get code productivity, and then the motivation comes from the personalization subtasks, and the engagement level comes from the conversation subtasks. So as and as the like more and more stuff keeps getting added into the project, the metrics will also increase simultaneously. So yeah, this is just basically like what I've been doing so far, and also like how I'm going to be progressing. Like every week, I hope to have at least one enough code for one metric and a metric as well included in it.
Yeah, that looks great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
think my PC has hanged again, so I'll stop screen sharing.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, that looks good. So you have a clear path forward. You have a couple things you need to work on. Well, obviously the technical aspects of the program, but then the different variables and the graphical representation and the metrics. Those are kind of left. So it looks like it's coming together pretty well. I think it's great.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, and like if anyone in the meet, comes up with any ideas of like anything more I can add. So like all the stuff that I'm kind of planning to do is up there on the GitHub board. So if anyone has any ideas, I think we can like leave comments there as well.
Yeah.
Like I do already have a lot on my plate for now. But in case there is anything else that I can incorporate, I can look at it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I like that you have this sort of mock project that you made up for the calculator project. So it's like one specific thing that you can map everything to and demonstrate it with. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's great. How are you coming on your documentation of the code?
So yeah, of the code, yeah, I'll just screen share what I have so far. So currently for this, like basically, so far I was creating these like small folders for each thing that I was doing, like this preliminary design and everything. So everything that I've done over there kind of has their own readmes for now, and those were like mostly focused on the actual setup, like setting up this environment. You need to do this to set up autocode rover, to set up Docker. So all of that documentation is definitely there in these individual folders. And then coming to the main kind of framework folder. So here I have a README. I also have a setup.py file. Like that's not that much as documentation, but basically the main thing of setting this up, I have kind of just put there like so the main like actually setting up this and even getting the toy project kind of linked up. That is kind of easily done using that setup.py file. Just a second. Okay, yeah. So this is a main README that's out there in my open source sustainability using LLMs folder. So this will be the first path or documentation that like anyone will come across. So this goes through everything. It goes through the overview of what this framework expects to do, what I have done so far, and also like kind of some insight into these like what does this contributor agent, maintainer agent, so these agents in my code, and what is this algorithm. So a little bit of brief of everything and what I've done so far. And then it comes to these installation instructions that anybody can use that setup.py file. Basically, the setup.py file is just to currently install this locally. You can git clone this and then do this pip install e. But once this is completely done, we can just make this a completely pip installable package. So no one needs to actually have any code on their system. They can just do this via pip install and use it sort of as a library. And that is there. Even though creating the repo, like the calculator project that I'm using for now, so I have a file for that as well. What it basically does is I put this calculator project on my Git, and it pulls it from there. And yeah, and then there is this to like show this directory structure. And then there is also some instructions about like running the, so earlier this was written last week, this readme, so it had instructions about running those individual scripts, but I'll update this to have instructions about running the one concise script that I have. And then I'll also add these over there, like these arguments that I sort of have, so what each argument does and how to use them. So that is one readme. And then another readme I have within my this framework folder, LLMOSC folder. And this just focuses more on like what is the purpose of this specifically. So this is not much right now, but later on, like I'll add more stuff to this readme, which will actually include documentation of more of the working of LLMOSC, like more than the setup. If anyone wants to look into what each agent is doing and how it is working internally, I can have that. And apart from that, for code documentation, I also have like comments within each file, so I can set up some like. Oh wait, was I not sharing?
No, I don't think you were sharing that part.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
I'm so sorry. I thought I was. Okay, yeah, sorry. These were the readmes I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is the internal readme I was talking about within the folder. It just kind of gives an overview of what this framework is. And this I will update with also with some specifics about how each of the things within the folder works. And this is the other readme. This is the other readme that's like the main, like whenever anyone goes to this open source sustainably using LLMs, this is a readme that kind of guides them through everything, what this framework is, what it has done so far, and also like what I like, how to set up everything and how to kind of install everything. And yeah, this is what I have so far. I also have blogs, I think, documenting everything till the last week. So I'll like come up with another bi-weekly blog soon once like I get some considerable progress regarding the metrics, because a lot of this time has been in figuring out the kinks. So once I have some considerable progress, I'll come up with another blog there as well. So I think that'll be the fourth or fifth blog.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hello, Morgan.
Hello.
Hi. You have any updates or?
Not so much in terms of software projects, but we had a wonderful Celsius meeting in terms of we did a Bits and Bio meetup. So this is kind of like our TechX community, but biotech focused, and we did that in concert with Celsius in terms of giving the lab profile, and got lots of great interest in the organoid project.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so made some great contacts with companies in the area and things like that, as well as some lots of neuroscientists came up asking where are all the neuroscience jobs. That I'm not sure where I could. You know, there's only so many implant companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, but a lot of great interest in the organoids from the usual suspects.
Yeah.
In terms of drug development and things like that.
Right.
But yeah, and then one person from the former Allen Institute person that I'm hoping to pick his brain later in terms of he'd gotten into biotech and was like, I think just moved from Boston doing like spatial transcriptomics, but was like total computational neuroscience PhD.
Yeah.
And so yeah, hoping to ask him about some of the Allen Institute's inner workings, and they're releasing a big, they just said they posted a stay tuned. I don't know if you saw this, but apparently a big educational software project that they're releasing.
Oh wow. Okay.
I think it's part of their kind of like, let's help support educators in terms of making it easier to access and utilize all their big database and databases and and other projects, but still waiting for a code drop or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty good. Look forward. So you're making some progress on the organoid stuff, kind of in the.
Yeah. I mean, I think I said we're going to focus. Excuse me. Focus first on a synthetic bio project in terms of culturing the growth factors. So this just using E. coli to express these particular proteins that we want at sufficient scale. Sorry, I'm also driving here, so
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah, we also just partnered with the largest biolab in the Bay Area to co-locate at a new space in Oakland.
Okay.
And this is great. They're bringing like 60 members, and they were kind of they were the main group behind the Open Insulin project. So a very very similar effort, but obviously to produce a particular medical product, right?
Right.
Because insulin itself is not patented, but the process of making insulin is patented, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that should be so there's going to be some great synergy from that, and they attended and they are already teaching classes. So by combining our efforts, I think it's going to really help get momentum going. But yeah, in terms of the organoids specifically, the cool thing being that like somebody from the innovation group at UCSC came by and was just like, I'm going to be able to solve all your problems with organoids.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. So he scanned my LinkedIn and then left. So I still don't have any details, but I take it that he's one of the people that is supposed to be kind of marketing UCSC IP kind of
Right.
things. And as you know, the great thing about UCSC is that they've been very clear about open sourcing and making everything available for others to use, right? So I don't think he's selling something.
Yeah.
I think he would just like to see us doing what I've said we want to do, which is clone their setup and see what we can do to help popularize what they've done,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. But very happy to see all the progress that people are making, and yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm still at the summer camp time here. So getting kids through summer camps.
Great. Thanks for the update. Looks like Jesse's here.
Okay. I know I missed some things before, and I cut in and cut out a bunch. But I don't know where we're.
Oh, well, just giving updates, I guess.
Nothing too major. I think Bradley and I both had the neuromatch mentoring sessions. I don't know if they came up earlier today. But that was interesting. Actually, the person I met was really. I'll say more. I think Saturday, but it was cool because the first one was like, yeah, I like computational neuroscience and have a little bit of experience in like robotics and stuff. But I really want to do more research in like embodied intelligence.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, I know about that. So I introduced them to like the Embodied Intelligence conference, the workshop conference thing, and some other stuff, and it was a fun. It ended up just being one person because I don't really know, but think things kind of get. I think the original plan was like, here are your mentors, go talk to them and know them before the meeting, and that didn't work out in any of my sessions that I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
But still, it was a really nice discussion both times actually, with different people. But this person was. It's always exciting to find someone who is like, yeah, I'm studying large language models and they're really cool, but I don't think they're gonna, be the one true path to like intelligence. Like I really want to study embodied intelligence. I'm like, oh, really? So that's kind of a fun thing, and I'm kind of gonna. I don't know if they check out the lab, that would be cool too. But that was sort of the crux of this week's session, and then just general stuff about it's always interesting to hear commentary on both where a person is located in the world, what the academic climate is there, what is it like to do academia or startups. I think a lot of all the people that I met were more academically based, with some curiosity about getting outside of academia to do industry things or what's it like to research in this space. And I think that's a major topic in general for us. So yeah, I mean, I could say more about that, but I don't have like a soapbox thing to talk about necessarily this week. But it was good to hear some of the updates that I caught a little bit of earlier today, and it's very interesting. This is sort of outside of Google Summer Code necessarily, but my attention is really turning towards how to prepare some things for essentially the fall semester, and like for internships, for fleshing out some project things. I want to reach out to things at UAlbany, my home, undergraduate alma mater, to kind of connect with them. They changed some of their stuff around, so it's done at the usual context there, which is a little bit more tough. But between that and there's some new opportunities here that I'm really curious about. Doing some things locally in Boston that kind of came up recently.
Okay.
Some of the universities here too. That's not anything concretely major to say about that, but just feeling trying to enjoy summer, but also realizing that it's academically it's sort of over.
Yeah.
It's time for there's other things that are immediately going to be here. So yeah, that's all for me for now.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, we had those NeuroMatch mentor sessions, and I had mine, and I think they were pretty productive. I had one person who's kind of going to meet, I guess, independently of those sessions. So that was pretty good. We met someone who was really, built a connection with. So that's great. And then, yeah, I'd be interested to see whoever this person is interested in embodied intelligence and see what they, if they're interested in being involved in the lab in some capacity or what they can learn about embodied intelligence based on our experiences with the conference and with some of the work we're doing. So, be great. Okay, so I'm going to finish up here with a couple things that I have. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was this screenshot. This is something I think I got this off of Twitter or X or whatever it is.
Oh, I was gonna share that myself here. It's funny.
Yeah, actually, I think it was posted in the Slack. Oh, this is on. Yeah, this is from. What is it? Instagram, I think. So this is. Yeah, we have the data, I guess. But yeah, this was. I think maybe Jesse posted this in the Slack. This is it says open source slow than fast, and it has to do with the different open source AI models. So this is this graph closed source versus open weight models. So this is where we have the weights, and we're either open sourcing the weights or keeping the weights proprietary. So you can see in this graph, this is from April 22 to July 24. This is, kind of, I guess, the accuracy on 5-shot learning. This is 90% up here. So we have closed source models, which you would expect would be more accurate maybe than the open weight models, just because they're maybe more corporate and locked down. But the open weight models, the point of this graph is that they're catching up to the closed source models, although I'm not really sure. You can put a trend line through just about anything. So there are a bunch of them down here that aren't as caught up as the closed source models, but this is an interesting graph. It just shows that there are some open weight models that are matching the performance of closed source models, and that's kind of the point of this graph. So we have the data says fascinating. Open source AI seems to be catching up to the closed source AI. So, did you have anything to say about this, Jesse?
Not really. Just sort of interesting to seeing, like, I see some things from we have the data person, and it's interesting to just see their account's interesting because some of it's more data oriented than others. But I think, I don't know. I think I'm most on my mind is more the conversations with the person studying LLMs for their their doctorate is about LLM recognition, and we had a few conversations about sort of the future of LLMs in this. It's kind of interesting in this context, but I don't know. I don't have anything major to say. I guess I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to point out that this is an interesting graph, but there's probably a lot more to say here because some of these models, of course, aren't caught up to the closed source. But one might ask, like, why is it that closed source models are more accurate than open weight models? And maybe should we expect that to be the standard, or should we actually expect the open weight models to be more accurate? I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's a lot of food for thought there. This is the next thing I'm going to talk about. This is something that I teach project management, and we go through a lot of different models for project management in the class, and there are many, many models that people use. And I talk about this in one of the lectures. And so this is from what they call the Cynefin framework. And Dave Snowden is the person who's developed the Cynefin framework. And Cynefin is a way to kind of think about problems and think about what you know and don't know about the problem domain and how that relates to project management. So I'm going to go over this graph and kind of talk about projects and the project domain. And you can't just assume that you know everything about your project domain. So depending on the project domain you're in, whether that be, say, like open source sustainability or some biological problem or whatever, you can't assume that they all have the same level of knowability or familiarity. And that's kind of the point of this graph. So let's go over this graph. So there's this, it's divided into quadrants here, and then there's a center area, which we'll talk about. So, and this is a lot busier than the graph I use in my class, so this is not like, I'm going to just draw your attention to some of the things here. So the upper right quadrant here is called clear, and it's as known and familiar. And this is an area where you know your problem domain. It's pretty knowable, it's pretty familiar, the objectives are clear. And you might think of this as some sort of industrial process, like making toothbrushes. We know how to make toothbrushes. You basically have the steps worked out, and you can set up an assembly line where you make toothbrushes, and you know how to do that. And really the only question is, how efficiently can you do it? Can you get your supplies into the production line and get them through? And there's a little step here called automation. So if you have this clear problem domain and you know how to do something, and you have the resources to do something, you can do it. And then you can use automation to make this repeatable, to make this more efficient. Using automation here is actually quite useful because it's just another step. So you know everything about the domain. It's very familiar. You just add automation. You know generally where to add that. Okay, now the next one, the upper left, is a step down, and it's called complicated. So complicated is knowable, but it's unfamiliar. So complicated might be where you know the process or know parts of the process, but not all of the process. Or you know parts of the process, but there are some unknowables in that process, depending on where you deploy your process. So, I guess maybe like large language models are maybe approaching complicated, where you can deploy a large language model and you kind of know you can train it, you know the performance, but you don't necessarily know what the prompt will yield. If you prompt it with some phrase or term or whatever, you may or may not know what to expect in terms of the output. So this is where, something's complicated. It's not that industrial applications domain. It's more of something where you don't exactly know what the outcome is going to be, but you know the process. Then you go down here and you have these bottom two quadrants, the bottom left being complex. And that's unknown. So complex might be like something like the organoids, where you kind of have a protocol worked out, but you don't exactly know how to optimize it. You may be able to apply automation, but you really have to work out the details for every specific cell type and things like that. So complex is this exploratory sort of phase where you have to do a lot of experimentation to kind of figure out where you are in that problem domain. And so complex is it's knowable, but it's unknown to you. So you have to figure out how that works. And it's not familiar. Familiarity is not an issue. It's just kind of like getting your hands around a problem and getting it implemented. And then finally, this lower right hand corner is called chaotic. And chaotic is the unknowable. And so this is where, you might have, you might be trying, maybe something like quantum computing, where we know the process somewhat, we know, but it can be an unpredictable thing, and there's some things that are unknowable, like how do you write a quantum program, and those are things that you may have to just kind of develop a set of techniques to even get to the complex, which is the unknown. So you have to basically build protocols to start to build protocols. Or sometimes you can't know certain things. Like you can't know, with quantum processes, there's a certain level of uncertainty that's just kind of built into the whatever the project technology is. So, and then, that is to say that you can move to these different quadrants as your problem becomes more resolved. So you could move from chaotic to complex to complicated to clear, right? Like you can move to those different states, or you can move backwards, unfortunately. You can move backwards if you don't know certain things. And, you lose knowledge because, how in science where, you think you know something and then you get a finding that's ambiguous or maybe even reveals that you don't know as much as you thought you did. So I think this kind of model is interesting from the standpoint of depending on what type of problem you're working on, you have these challenges to kind of knowing your problem domain. And then that translates into being able to manage the project and get things done. Okay. Finally, I wanted to share this paper here that Zura posted in one of the Slack channels. And this is something that he found interesting. This is on generative AI, and it's what it's doing in terms of creativity and content management. So the title of this paper is Generative AI Enhances Individual Creativity but Reduces the Collective Diversity of Novel Content. This is by Doshi and Hauser. So the abstract reads, creativity is core to being human. Generative artificial intelligence, including powerful large language models, hold promise for humans to be more creative by offering new ideas, or less creative by anchoring on generative AI ideas. Which I guess is what it means is that you can either use it to work to be more for humans to be more creative. You can apply the technology, or you can use the technology just to generate stuff and knock humans out of the loop. I guess that's what they're getting at. We studied the causal impact of generative AI ideas on the production of short stories in an online experiment where some writers obtained stories from an LLM. Okay, so you're basically generating short stories. Some short stories were generated by, the people, I guess the humans, and then some writers obtained story ideas from an LLM and they wanted to compare those. We find that access to generative AI ideas causes stories to be evaluated as more creative, better written, and more enjoyable, especially among less creative writers. This is where if you use generative AI in conjunction with your own abilities, you can enhance those abilities in terms of creativity, quality of writing, enjoyability, if you're a less creative writer. If you're maybe a more creative writer, it's maybe a different story. However, generative AI-enabled stories are more similar to each other than stories by humans alone. So this is, in general, it's evaluated as being an improvement upon your abilities if you're less creative. But it's also very homogeneous. The stories are all basically the same in terms of those attributes. But then, of course, if you're a human, you can generate a wider variety of stories, especially if you're good at writing, or if you're more of a creative writer. These results point to an increase in individual creativity at the risk of losing collective novelty. So this is where there's a trade-off between individual creativity and collective novelty. So if we have this practice of everyone embracing generative AI, you can improve maybe the creativity of the group, of the aggregate of content creators, but you lose that individual creativity. You lose that ability to become maximally creative and really generate novel things. This is, this kind of holds true also for automation. That when you automate something, you remove the ability to innovate. So, like I was showing you in the Cynefin thing, if you know your domain, if you automate toothbrush making, that can generate toothbrushes that are very predictable, has a lot of the attributes optimized, but it doesn't really drive innovation. Okay, so innovation comes from experimentation. It comes from that lower left-hand quadrant, and that's not something you're doing in an industrial assembly line. And it just kind of relates to this in how people are kind of incorporating these models in their workflow. This dynamic resembles a social dilemma. With generative AI, writers are individually better off, but collectively a narrower scope of novel content is produced. So again, the writers individually improve their ability, but there's a narrower scope of content, so you just kind of all produce maybe similar content. And that's a trade-off. Our results have implications for researchers, policymakers, and practitioners interested in bolstering creativity. So we have a couple of comments in the chat. So this is Jesse.
More about the project management stuff.
Okay.
But, if you want to talk more about I don't want to interrupt the article talk either.
Okay. Let me read this. Already the project management discussion. There's a lot to be said about that in terms of navigating what those spaces are. Yeah, and this is, kind of that's an interesting point about how do you navigate different types of projects, and what if you think about it as a space, how do you go from a very controlled process to a very experimental one and back and forth? I think especially Go ahead, sorry. I think especially in startups, what creates many troublesome spots are the experience or lack thereof of helping people navigate unknown spaces, or relatively unknown, or managing the regulation between states of known for a group of people trying to build new things. Yeah.
One of the things that I don't know if I'll have time to finishing it in the summer period, but on my list of things to write about was sort of this, basically using this analogy of leading a group of people through, almost like a dark area or a cave, or I'm a little bit steeped in Dungeons and Dragons stuff right now, but if your character can see in the dark and other people can't, that's a factor. What degree of dark vision or uncertainty vision do people have? What degree of familiarity with the type of the environment? Are they used to being in caves or in dungeons, or they've never done it before? And these be I think for people who one of the biggest things, both being here in Boston and just being more intentionally in the space and of all this things that we're talking about, both industry or R&D and industry or straight up startups, is there's a tremendous variety of both experience levels, willingnesses to learn, and also yes, there are definitely certain areas in the world, or certain universities like Boston and all of the universities here, Silicon Valley, or different hubs around the world that just churn out people. This, they heavily incentivize and motivate towards make the startup, just do it, you're going to be fine, or just it's just that I've met many people. It wasn't how I grew up. It wasn't the schools that I went to, but I have eventually made friends that were their life course was, yeah, I'm going to go to undergrad, and then I'm going to make a startup or two, and it doesn't matter if they fail or not for this, but that's just their life path. And it just this huge variety of people in these spaces. And it's really interesting because some of them have never really worked in a team before, and then leading people through these spaces of going back to Bradley's papers, what through those like problem spaces is a very there's very different amounts of navigational ability, and then also like one of the things I wanted to write in this sort of blog post with the cave analogy, and this is based off of an experience that happened in one of the groups I was working with a couple years ago, is sort of like as in the role. This is again going back to kind of my pedagogical project management teaching cap in this space, but like understanding that there's a certain amount of both, yeah, I guess confidence in yourself to do it and experience that comes with it, or just, you have to fail to succeed in some ways too. But there's a very particular, you hear the phrase like political capital in terms of like, oh, does someone have the clout or the influence to get something done in politics? And there's also sort of a project management in ambiguity capital. And I don't know if this comes up in like I know Bradley teaches about this, but I don't remember if like how you talk about this in that course necessarily. But like there's sort of a willingness, when you're leading people through dangerous or scary or undetermined spaces, there's definitely a certain amount of project leadership capital that you have, and you have to be very careful about it, because if you lead people in this, like if you're leading someone through a dark cave and you don't tell them, hey, there's a big drop here, or you could run into this wall here, or you get caught on that, and they do, eventually they're like, well, I don't really want to go anywhere now, or I don't trust you, or like I'm going to go back, or there's a certain amount of buy-in that comes with it, and it's this sort of this game of how do you manage that? So that's a little bit of a preview on that, but that's something I think about quite a bit, because there's this sort of like shepherding, navigating aspect that can be very. I think even more so in certain startups, or like the proto startup spaces where not everybody's getting paid or not everybody's getting an incentive. It's a little bit different than if you have, you're getting your cash either way from a paycheck or a salary or like a guaranteed thing. Mm-hmm. It's different in both of those spaces somewhat, but I think that's just something that I feel like is super apparent to me, and not a lot of people talk about, both as a leader in doing it, but also like even more commonly, how do you help someone trying to manage that? Because there are ways that you can make it go a lot smoother, or just, do you understand how to communicate in those situations where people are trying to figure stuff out? So yeah. That's my my wrap on that.
Yeah.
That stuff.
So I talk about that in terms of just generally social capital in the course. Like I have this at the beginning of the course, I talk about kind of like, what is the glue of a project, and some of that is social capital, some of that is trust, and things like that, and just kind of like going through those things. And you're right about, having that ability to guide people through unknown areas. I think a lot of like, startups where you're dealing with like organoids or maybe like AI even, you don't know exactly, there are going to be technical hurdles. Some of those things you're going to have to solve on your own as you work through the problems that you're posing for yourself. So like usually we get this high level vision of a project, what we want to do, and everyone thinks it's great, and then you have to implement it. And then sometimes you don't know, like there's certain technical hurdles you just don't understand, or you have to sort of do research, or you have to kind of decide which direction to go. And that's where it can be tricky. And you're right, you need to have capital, social capital, political capital to get people through that. You have to be good at like kind of, shepherding people through that space, making sure that they don't, go down a lot of blind alleys, but also ensuring that they have support for doing, exploring things. So yeah, I think that's great. Thinking about that kind of model of, political and social capital, and how you can squander it very easily.
Yes. And like giving, like, as another thing that came up, just to mention it here, I know we're kind of over time, but it's like, how do you make channels for feedback that are both like valid and, like, I think about this in terms of just, this is another thing that just popped in my mind. One of the things in reviewing my stuff that I would love to try to write more on and finish is like, remember we talked about demo or die stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and there was this thing that was like beyond demo or die, and a lot of it was sort of commenting on the necessity of having demo or die stuff in terms of how you're talking about things, but also like creating a community within which you can constructively build like how you talk about that stuff. And I'm mentioning it here because I think in the terms of project management and the dark spaces and whatnot, having like the way you structure feedback channels is really big, because, and even working with people across cultures or across experiences makes it even harder sometimes because you have to normalize. It's okay to say this. It's okay to say I don't know what's going on or I'm comfortable here, and that's its own, like, that's a very critical component to doing all this stuff, because if you do everything else right and you don't get actual feedback from people, then like you could have this master plan and be really experienced, but if they don't feel comfortable telling you stuff, then you think you're going in the right direction, and then you realize everybody just fell off the cliff, and you're just like, okay, we're gonna go fight the boss, and it's just you, and that's not a good outcome usually. So anyway, I'm happy to talk more about this, and even like, I'm almost curious. Like, I know you've said stuff about the course before, and I've seen the materials, but are you teaching the course again anytime soon, or like,
Yeah,
I always
this
feel like you want to do
yeah
more of
this
that.
fall is next time.
Is
But
there going
yeah,
to be like an online component again, or there was some like auditing thing that happened before? And I think
yeah, I
that
didn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I might be able to do that. I have.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, to be continued.
yeah,
I
we'll see.
appreciate everything today. It's good.
All right, well, yeah. Thanks. So thanks everyone for attending. Thank you for giving updates for everyone here. And we'll meet next week. And good luck with your projects.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.